Yes, yes, we are live now.
Great. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. My name's Ted Doan, Vice Chair of the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee, and I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:31 p.m. So first of all, I'll just start with a land acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So as standard for these meetings, just begin with a roll call of members. I encourage all members to keep their cameras on during the meeting. And first of all, I'll start with, I'll call out everybody. Start with Councillor White.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to be here. Happy New Year.
Great, thank you. We hear you loud and clear. Ryan?
Yep, I'm here. Happy New Year, everyone.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Muyu? Dominique? Diana?
It's pronounced Dinah.
Oh, Dinah. Okay, thank you.
Spelling and pronunciation don't match.
Okay. Thank you very much. We hear you loud and clear too. Elena?
Hi, yes, I am here and Happy New Year to everybody.
Great, Happy New Year. And Michelle? I believe Michelle is here, so we were speaking to her earlier. So let's proceed.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Great, no problem, Michelle. I knew you were there. So thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the agenda. So first item on the agenda is the election of the chair. So I hand this over to the legislative assistant to run us through.
Hi, everyone. I'll be calling in the election for the chair. I want to know that you can nominate yourself, and each nomination will need a mover and a seconder. So I would like us to follow through so that we won't miss it. So I'll be calling in for the election of the chair. Is anybody that wants to put his or her name forward?
Okay, as vice chair, I've agreed to nominate myself for that position.
No, for the chair first. We are calling for the chair.
Oh, yes, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we need a mover and a seconder to agree third nomination for the chair.
I can move the Ted is
Okay.
nominated for chair.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you. Then. Okay. So is there any other nomination? Is there anybody that wants to nominate his or herself for the election of the chair? I'm calling for the second time. Do we have another nomination for the election of the chair? I'm calling for the third time. Do we have another nomination for the election of the chair? Okay, thank you. Since there's no other nomination, Ted is now nominated chair of Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. I will need a mover and a seconder for his nomination.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, Ted, you're now being elected the chair of Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. Thank you, and over to you.
Okay, thank you. So next item is the election of the vice chair. As chair, I'd like to call for nominations of the position of vice chair for the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. And each of these nominations for this would need a mover and a seconder. So I'd like to move Michelle for the position of vice chair.
Thank you. Okay,
I can
thank
second
you.
that.
Okay, and do we have a seconder?
I can second.
Okay,
Michelle.
Councillor White.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So we have Okay, so we have a move. I guess we have a motion to nominate Michelle as the vice chair of the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. Are there any further nominations? Okay, I'll call a second time. Are there any further nominations? And third call, are there any further nominations? Okay, hearing none, we'll move that Michelle Rayo Winters be nominated vice chair of the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee. So again, I think we do a motion on this. Is that right?
Yes, all right,
So-
Chair.
So I move her again for that motion.
I'll move Michelle.
Councillor White, thank you. And a seconder,
All second.
Elena, thank you. All in favor of the motion? Raise your hands or say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any contrary minded? Hearing none. Michelle, you are nominated as the vice chair. So thank you very much for contributing to
Thank
that.
you very much, everyone.
Great. Next item would be approval of the minutes. So the previous meeting was November 14th, 2024. And I would just ask the committee if there's any edits from your read of the minutes for that date. Do I hear of any edits? Okay, seeing that there's none, I need a motion and a seconder for the minutes.
I'll move that.
Okay, and a seconder.
I can second.
I'll-
Go to Dinah.
Okay, Dinah, thank you. And so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Raise your hands or say aye. Okay, contrary minded?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, the next item is the approval of the order of business and approval of the additions and deletions to the agenda. So we'll move on to that, and I'll just ask the legislative assistant if there's any changes to the agenda.
No changes to the agenda.
And do any members of the committee have any changes to the agenda? Okay, I don't hear of any additions or deletions, so we can proceed with the following motion. So I just invite a member of the committee to move that the agenda be approved and presented. I need a mover and a seconder.
I can move for it.
Great. And a
I'll
seconder.
second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Raise your hands or aye. Great. Contrary minded?
Aye.
Great, thank you. So motion carried. There's no business arising out of the minutes. And now I'll call for a declaration of conflicts of interest. So if anybody has a conflict of interest for today's agenda, just let me know. Are there any conflicts of interest? So there's none. Consideration of deferred business, there's none. The next item is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. And I'll just ask the clerk if we've got any correspondence.
No correspondence received from the clerk's office.
Great, thank you.
What about the letter that I wrote? Is that not considered correspondence?
It's actually been considered in the update, the maintenance update that we're going to have today.
Okay,
So it's been addressed there. So
okay. So it won't go on the record as correspondence.
Sorry, yours won't be going as correspondence.
Okay,
Yes, yours is members, so it won't be tagged as correspondence.
thanks.
Yep. It will be addressed, and you'll have an opportunity to speak to it in that section as well. Are there any petitions to be presented?
No petition received from the clerk's office.
And there's no presentations. Yep. The next item is information items brought forward. So there's none there. And then the next item is reports and discussion. So it's the operations update. So at this point, I'd just like to ask Ian Kennedy, he's the supervisor for Major Parks West, to speak to Point Pleasant Park Committee about the operations memo that's been circulated. So over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Ted. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Yeah, this is going to be a pretty brief operations update as we're just rolling into the new year. And as I mentioned, I believe in the last meeting, the scope of our work is much different than in the quiet, cold winters than in the flourishing green summers. But still, the main focus outside of road work is removal of hazardous and invasive tree species, which is something we're doing year round to maintain the park. It's easier to identify hazardous trees this time of year too, with the lack of foliage and canopy in the park. Also, with the temperature fluctuations, we find more deadfall and trees coming down post rainstorms and snowstorms. We've been doing a lot of cutbacks, not so much in the canopy like we do in the fall, but more along the perimeter. We've been working along Franklin, which is on the west side of the park. A lot of the pines have been growing off over onto the sidewalk, and we're seeing a lot of maintenance post-storm there. And there were some requests from the public and park goers to address that, both in person and through service requests. So we've done that, and then down on the Chain Rock and down Point Pleasant Drive. A lot of road work as usual, but now with a focus on snow clearing and maintaining safety of the road with the fluctuating temperatures again. As we come in and out of a frost, the roads become at once wet in the day, but then icy in the afternoon. So it's kind of a ongoing back and forth every day of keeping those roads properly sanded for public safety, and also keeping the drainage properly going. Because even though we are in the winter, we do get rainy seasons, as we saw quite a bit of rain just prior to Christmas. If any of that water is left standing, larger roads like Cambridge and Sailors Memorial Way basically become skating rinks. So we're focusing on that quite a bit. Staff is wrapped up in many other things outside of the park, special events related in the last month for New Year's and so forth. So we've been kind of everywhere, but went in the park focusing mostly on the basics and infrastructure. As mentioned before, and the correspondence, we talked with Halifax Fire, who had given the presentation on emergency fire response, and had been informed that only one hydrant in the park is working. They responded with us saying that their operation or how they would approach a fire in the park would not be hindered in any way. They would still have the same plan and use the existing fire hydrant. Those were decommissioned before my time and have always been that way. But they have said that they would use the remaining hydrant on Franklin Street to serve as their direct water source, on top of the other implements of their plan of bringing in water. And they also noted that much of the deadfall on material from the forest thinning and that is already present in the park doesn't fall within the scope of a fire risk, as the way in which we are spreading and maintaining where we're laying down that deadfall through tree removal and natural trees naturally falling is within the guidelines of the master plan and the management plan, and doesn't pose a fire risk currently. Other than that, we're going into the new year confident that for another year, we're well-resourced and well-staffed, which has been a bit of an ebb and flow over the last few years, but we're looking forward to a year of continuing to maintain the park as best we can. And currently no major projects on the go. Like I said, this time of year, there is not a lot of infrastructure that maintenance on a large scale that can be completed due to the weather. But as we move closer into spring and summer and things start to reveal themselves and budgets open up, a lot of that stuff will start coming down the pipeline. We do have some ideas for drainage infrastructure, but again, that's something we can't approach until the new year. Quite brief, but if anyone has any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to ask.
Great, thanks, Ian. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to just go through the role of people in the call. Dinah, I know you've got a question, so perhaps I'll turn it over to you first.
Yeah, after the deputy, I mean, I'm no expert by any means, and I'm new on the committee, but I was a little surprised when the deputy fire chief's presentation talked about 3 functioning fire hydrants and natural water sources that would be available in the case of a fire. And as I said, as a regular park goer, I was under the impression that none of the hydrants work. And I believe that's correct. None of the hydrants in the park, the 3 that he indicated, are functioning. Is that correct, Ian?
Yeah, so there's 3.
There's no hydrants in the park per se.
Technically, there is a functioning one, and there's a kind of unofficial side entrance where Chain Rock and Franklin meet. You can kind of come in through where Halifax Water sets up their Halifax Water connects to there every summer to set up the drinking fountain, and that hydrant's just on the corner, kind of with the boundary where the stone wall intersects there. It's still on park property, but that one is functioning.
But that's an HRM, maintained by HRM, or
yes.
Yeah. So Point Pleasant Park doesn't maintain any hydrants.
We maintain that one. That one gets inspected, but the 3 in the park were decommissioned over a decade ago because the infrastructure that feeds those is, from what I've been told, is deemed it's no longer functional, and then the cost to re-implement that. And I wasn't involved in that, but Halifax Fire said that wouldn't change their plan, as they would feed into the Franklin Street one. Because
I'm wondering, considering what's been in the news lately, there's been a study done that was in the paper just beginning of January about the increased fire risks in wildfires, and also I looked at the comprehensive plan, and I guess after Hurricane Juan, a lot of the deciduous trees have been planted. And the last time the fire chief said a fire hazard assessment was done, a sort of an official one, was in 2019. And I'm thinking a lot of those deciduous trees are now much bigger. There's a lot more leaves on the ground and dry, with the drier climate and all that. I'm wondering if it isn't time to have maybe a more serious fire hazard assessment done, because I mean, it could be an enormous disaster. And just after coming back after Hurricane Juan, for the park to just be getting back into something that everybody can enjoy, what would the process be for, maybe, I mean, I know that it was started before, I know this question of the fire hazard was started well before I joined the committee. And that's why the deputy fire chief did a presentation. But honestly, the presentation was a bit worrisome, where, he didn't know that those fire hydrants had been out of commission for a decade. And that was part of the plan, and also the natural water sources. Well, the pond, if it's a dry summer, which means the fire risk is high, that pond is a mud puddle. In August, when we had a dry spell, there was not much water in that pond. So we're looking at the ocean, which is pretty far from the forest in most places, where you have to cross the green spaces in the road. So I'm just wondering if maybe we could request a more in-depth walkthrough fire assessment to be done, because I worry that we're not ready if there was an emergency.
And Ian, I tend to agree with that. And the amount of deadfall from the tree trimming has changed quite a bit since 2019. And as well, you know, I've noted in previous meetings, I mean, the trees from the park really reach over and touch the trees, you know, on the other side of Point Pleasant Drive. So there's really in my mind, a fire risk to the entire neighborhood.
Yeah, I guess that would have to be something we would reach out to Halifax Fire for. The process for that, I'm not sure how that would go.
I think it's a very important thing to do, because I noticed also after the reading through the parts of that comprehensive plan, a lot of the focus after Hurricane Juan was on you know, reforesting with diverse types of trees and that sort of thing. And there wasn't a lot mentioned about the mitigating possible fire risk. And I think now in 2025, that's become a lot more of a reality. And maybe the assessment could be done more with that focus in mind. Yeah.
So I'll jump in there, Ian.
Right.
So what we can do is we can reach out to the deputy fire chief again and get his take on it to see if they think there needs to be a new assessment done, because this is really their area of expertise. Wouldn't be a parks operations area of expertise. We're not fire.
But I think there's also isn't there also an urban forest management committee?
There's an urban forest. There's an operations team for urban forest management. But what we'll do is we'll reach out to the fire chief or a deputy fire chief. We'll get his take on it, see if he deems it necessary to do a new assessment. And then if he does, that's great. Then they'll do the assessment and we will update you next meeting. I think it's the best way to go.
Thanks, Adam. That sounds great. Yeah, we'll add that to the agenda.
Okay.
Dinah, any additional questions with respect to that or the
No,
report?
I said that. I just I know I'm not the first one to bring this to the table, but I really don't want to see it just go away with this, you know, comment saying, "Oh, everything's fine," because
yeah,
I'm not sure.
I will note, as you did mention, and the comprehensive plan says a focus on not keeping or reinstating deciduous trees. The forestry thinning project that's been ongoing that just finished this year, within that, the trees that were being removed were Norway spruce, Sitka spruce, Scotch pine, and Austrian pine and fir,
Right.
and non-native deciduous trees. So a lot of those are removed through the thinning project, and the thinning project acts as a in itself, like the intent isn't for fire prevention, but in itself acts as a fire prevention. It's more in line with maintaining, following the comprehensive plan and the integrity.
But the deciduous trees have more leaves and more risk, you know, the dry leaves in the fall, whereas the coniferous ones, you know, you didn't have as much falling dry stuff on the ground, you know, which is now increasing the fire risk, you know, that.
So with removing it, keeping certain coniferous and keeping certain deciduous and removing them, it's like that's part of it. But that's where our operations would fall into our efforts to remediate that. We do have an arborist on staff who is, I would say, 5 days a week, or at least 4 days a week, in and out of the woods, doing monitoring and doing their best to keep our operation maintaining as best we can within it.
But isn't their focus more on the disease and the health of the trees, whereas the arborist, is he looking at fire hazards? My point is, I don't think
he's fire. I'd say he's maybe monitoring. I don't want to say maybe. He's monitoring. He's looking for disease and stuff, because those are also at the forefront. But he's monitoring the tree stand itself from all levels. And like a hazardous tree could be, and tree removal could already be a tree that's already deadfall. Like we go and we clear up large scale deadfall in the woods when we can, and in other parks too. So, we can reach out to Halifax Fire for that.
Yeah, just to make sure that the fire hazard risk is being addressed as vigorously as it probably should be in 2025.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Just reach out to the other members. Let me have a look here. So Ryan, did you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. And Elena, did you have anything?
No questions. I echoed everything Dinah said.
Okay. Michelle?
I was just wondering if Ian had any 311 calls about cleanup, snow removal recently in the past, the snow that we had just during the holidays. From the Facebook group, there were a lot of comments about that they felt people were feeling concerned that the park wasn't cleaned up as properly or it wasn't cleaned up as quickly. And I'm not so sure that I agree with that. I'm not sure what they were looking for. Someone posted the plan and the standards and where the park maintenance falls in the schedule. And I made a comment that I'm pretty sure that even when there's stones scattered down as an anti-slip type of process, it's not like the truck goes through those main roads and plows it right down to the ground. So I'm not sure what people were looking at, but there seemed to be several comments that I was quite surprised at, and I was wondering, I guess, if Ian received any actual calls about it, if there was any 311 calls.
Yeah, we received 2. One, all I will say is one stated that we hadn't cleared the parking lots, even though we had. There was staff in for 3 days straight doing the parking lots, and it stated that none of the parking lots had been cleared of snow, but I was there and they were. Official. We got 2 service calls that went to me, and one of them had images too of some of the off trails.
Just feel that they were like lack of awareness or understanding.
Also,
like
we were short staffed because it was Christmas time. If that storm were to have happened right now, different story. But it kind of snuck up on everybody, and one of the things we received a complaint service request about was, I believe, some of the trails along Serpentine and Fir Walk, which aren't maintained in the winter. Mm-hmm. We do sometimes.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Is that I was trying to figure out Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, we do sand and gravel those like at times, but when we work on the park, like the parking lots are a focus, and then the main roads, if we do get a chance to plow, it needs to be very cold. Otherwise, we're, like you said, more so laying down material after it's been compacted.
It was about a day, I think, after the storm before it was plowed, and it had been tromped down quite a bit from people, and then it got very cold afterwards. But I think, Ian, your explanation of the time of year, with staffing and the holidays, kind of explains that quite well.
We had one staff member in throughout the week, and he did what he could, and we had majority of staff in for the first hit of snow over the Saturday and Sunday, and then it's usually by the time we're done the parking lots and get into the park, it's already trampled down, and then that's the surface we work with and go from there, and spread sand and run through the park.
I just wanted to make sure that I didn't think that there was a failure in service from my limited knowledge and then also my usage over the years. So I'm not sure if people have different expectations, but my background is in communications, and I often find that the biggest issues I've had with the park, or I hear of other people complaining, is that they just don't know the rules of the park. And I hope that we can look at that over time and have people understand what they're, to meet their expectations, to manage their expectations, and to have people know the rules and follow them. It's one of the big things for me.
Right. And I'm
Thank you.
sure most park users appreciate the work that you and your team do, and the graveling and the plowing. So it's certainly appreciated in the winter.
Thanks,
Ted.
Councillor White, did you have any questions?
More just to talk a little bit about the snow clearing. I did get one email about it, and I've been talking to Ian and Adam, and we met down at the park today. Where is my? Yeah. I had a nice walk around and saw the facilities and the equipment. Yeah, so the one email I did receive from a resident was that it had been plowed and not sanded. Yeah, but the one thing that I'd like to see come out of this, and we've talked about it a bit, is the guideline for snow clearing. I'd like to see that posted on our website. I think on the Point Pleasant Park website would be the best place to have it posted, as opposed to the main snow clearing one. So do we keep an action list as we go through this committee, or how do we ensure that gets done?
I know from my end, I can reach out to like corporate comms, corporate communications, and see if there's a way that we can get that posted. You mean to like the subsection Point Pleasant site within Halifax.ca?
Yeah, I think so. If people are thinking about the park and look
Yeah, because
curious.
there's other stuff listed there, and like the dog, I think the dog bylaw and other stuff are listed there as well. So
Yeah, I think that'd be a good place
that
for
in
this.
the PDF.
It would be nice to see some of those items minuted following the meeting. So if they were included in the minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, that's okay. That's good. So yeah, so far we have the two things. We have the deputy fire chief question if we needed another fire assessment, and then to get this guideline posted. So however we want to just keep track, and if they're in the minutes, that's great. That we don't forget. Thank you.
Super. Yeah. Anything else?
No, I thanks to Dinah for the clearing up about the hydrant. I had the same question, so just knowing which one's working and where it is.
Yeah, I had the same questions too, so I really appreciate the insight. I had a couple of questions myself. So actually I had some questions around the snow plowing as well, so that's been answered. And I was just curious about the gazebos. So I walk by the gazebos quite often, and I noticed there's a bit of rusting and probably maintenance that they could use in the spring. Is there any thought around that? Any plan to upgrade those?
Yeah, we were talking about that this summer. We did some work on some gazebos in other parks, but other than finalized plans, we were talking. Me and the lead hand were talking last year of how we would. They're quite large gazebos, and we talked, they would need to be inspected by someone maybe for structural reasons to see if the metal, they would need to be basically, they would need to be stripped down to the bare bones, but then we wonder if the structure is not intact enough to take that on, like what level of repair. So what we talked about was finding someone to look at it to see, it's like, should this be replaced? Can it functionally be repainted via a contractor? And how we'd go about that, but nothing finalized yet.
Okay.
Most of the gazebos that we have worked on, like within staff, are wooden. Where the ones that we have are concrete base with basically cast iron or in steel. So that's something we talked about, reaching out to a contractor that could specialize in that. Whereas in holding up resources for an extended period of time, i.e. having a large portion of staff focusing on that for, say, an extended period of time, we could have a contractor come in and repaint and restructure that much quicker. But for finalized ideas and plans on that, I haven't got to that point yet.
Yeah, that sounds good. I know they're quite historic to the park, so any kind of
Yeah.
maintenance will help kind of preserve them and keep them solid into the future. My other question was on the stone walls. So I know we've talked about this before, and you had work happening this summer to fix up some of the stone walls. Is there a plan for next spring and summer for that as well?
From my end, remaining within budgetary restrictions that I have, I can only feasibly focus on maintenance for that wall to the level which I did this summer, which we got, I would call it like spot work. We got 4 locations done, but large portions of it need to be repaired. But I know we talked numbers in previous meetings last year, but it is quite costly, and I'm not in a budgetary position to achieve that. It would have to be something that would have to be taken into a capital project. I think removal is entirely out of the question. That's something that both I believe in, and I think the public wants to see those walls stay. It's kind of a part of the park, and it acts as a structural, historical, and natural, or a barrier for the park to exceed beyond its limits, and for maintenance reasons. But I think I mentioned this before. For decades, a lot of those walls were maintained by staff themselves who were skilled in masonry, where I don't have staff members that are skilled in masonry, let alone what's the word I'm looking for? Not historical, but just that level of the heritage masonry, not to that level. So
Right.
There is plans to focus on what's the most hazardous, and what is causing the most decay at the moment, and what can be achieved within my means from a budgetary point. But that would be a project I could reach to within our department and contract supervisor to capital, but it's quite large that it may even, the price point on that is massive.
Yeah, I would think though sometimes the maintenance cost now would be cheaper than kind of trying to reconstruct it completely later on. So there may be some benefits, right?
Exactly.
To doing that work early.
Yeah, like doing the work now. Like the stuff I've been focusing on are more the sort of so-called the corners, but a few of those were repointed along Point Pleasant Drive. But doing the corners that are pointed now is more feasible, but the long stretches, the difficulty with the long stretches is if you start in the middle, then it's like what's going to get decay beside it and after it. And that's something the person before me looked into quite a bit, and that we'll continue to have to look into. I think the last time a major project was done on the walls was they redid the stone wall around the stone house, the lodge, and that took almost 2 months, and now that needs work. It's difficult too with the location of where that wall is, with the ocean water, the ocean air, the salt air. A lot of the compound used to keep those stones in doesn't really react or last as long as it would elsewhere, being so close to the ocean.
No, thank you. Is there any further questions? Okay, that's great. So we'll move to the next agenda item.
I have one question, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate for here.
Sure. Why not?
I just had one question. I wasn't sure if it was here. Ian, when we had talked about that new playground, you had said that it wasn't really in your responsibilities. It was kind of the playground people decided that a playground would go into the park. I'm just wondering, I went to look at it myself for the first time before Christmas. The walk that I do a very specific walk to get the longest amount of kilometers in that I can, and stay in the off-leash section as long as I can. But when I went over, I'm just wondering, like, is that not a problem waiting to happen as far as, being a multi-use park? Like, there's no gate around it to protect the kids inside from an area where it's an off-leash dog area as well, or from the dogs that might relieve themselves there, or worse yet, depending on I don't recall what the ground is surrounding it, but there's still some feral cats down there, aren't there? Like, that's always a problem in neighborhoods with cats and sandboxes type of thing. So I'm just wondering, is before something happens and we have the public starting a war against each other and picking sides, is there some way that we can provide a way that park users can get along well and minimize or mitigate any potential tensions between children playing there and dogs happen to be walking by that are off leash, and then there's deer and raccoon in the park now, so they're going to be pooping on it and peeing on it. But someone sees a dog peeing on it, there'll be lots of upset. And if it starts smelling like pee because the feral cats come up, it'll be the dog walkers who are blamed. Just something. Yeah, I don't know. And again, maybe just pointing it in the right direction if this isn't the time or place for that discussion.
What I will say, the actions of the public and what they should be and shouldn't be doing within the park are dictated by the bylaw. So as the public should be conducting themselves as they should within the bylaw. As for stuff like, animals relieving themselves in a playground, I think that's kind of a risk in any playground in the municipality. I used to work in the playground department, so as a technician. So it's not so much that I don't have anything. The playground is not really my responsibility. It's still park's responsibility. It's just another one of my coworkers.
Different section of and that's why I was saying, I don't want to bother you with it if it's not technically. That because I remember what you had said about it.
Yeah, every playground is on a maintenance schedule that is being, so someone would be there checking on that anywhere within every 2 to 3 weeks at least, or more frequency. And any service requests related to that, we go straight to those people who would then come on site, whether it's a safety hazard, whether it's the cleaning and whatnot. But I guess I will say, as someone who's worked in playgrounds, I've never that cross connection of especially dogs. It happens, like many other parks are open spaces with that cross connection, but it's really on the public to maintain those boundaries for that. That section is I will say, a compliance hotbed of infractions. That section of the road, especially around dogs.
And I guess that's where my concern is coming from, right? Like, and the fact that we don't have park patrol anymore, like they did eons ago when I started walking there. It was, that's kind of some of the things that's missing. And I did some research, just quick, dirty on my own, but it is a multi-use park. And as the city grows and we're seeing the other issues about population density happening, I didn't see a lot of answers when I tried to do some research, but even US national parks are the fact that the way that they're being they're being overcrowded is the number of people using them has just grown phenomenally. And so when you have a multi-use park, what I was trying to find out and didn't seem to see anything on it, it makes sense when you have a smaller population density to have a park being multi-use, but if you have so many people using it for so many different reasons or for different activities, then that's when you're going to run into issues and concerns. And so how do you again, mitigation techniques to
Mhm.
address those things before they become a problem. Like, yeah, because I think that right now that one of the big things is that I don't understand how people don't know that there's no dogs along the waterfront after 10 a.m. But they don't. And
Yeah,
I've
like
heard there's been some fines given out, but it should also again, it's up to users. And unfortunately, I don't find that these days people are prone to police themselves as well as they could. But I would probably purposely not go around the playground area when I was
Right.
when I was out with my dogs, because I don't want to run into that kind of drama of something happening or be part of whoever's to blame for something that might have happened there.
Like, I guess what I can say is something on my end, like in the immediate, like specific signage can be placed, like rather than saying no dogs, there could be signage posted at the entrance, the concrete envelope there, that right in front of the playground, that could specifically say no dogs on playground, and so forth.
Yeah.
We don't, and then we also don't have the park patrol, but if you're a regular user, you've probably seen them. Teresa and Mark, our compliance officers, they've been in and out of the park. They're compared to their
You know what?
frequency
I've
is
only
increasing.
heard them that they're there. I was going to say I've heard that they're there, but I haven't run into them specifically myself. I've been using the place for so long, and I've heard all of the stories over the years, and I've gone through the different dramas that have happened, that I go when it's not too people-y.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I specifically make sure, because I just don't want to get in. I go there to relax and rest my brain from the frustrations of the day, and so I don't want to go and get into an interaction with someone and who's arguing about. I mean, I've had people tell me to get my dog on a leash on an area that's specifically, for the past 30 years that I've been going there, off leash, and it's like, so there's nothing anyone can do to fix that, other than I try to go at a place and time when there's not likely to see people who pretend to know the rules, or cyclists who go there but don't bother to check the rules on cycling before they go. So
right,
yeah,
absolutely.
I don't know what the answer is. And I know that you did before I'm just new to the board, but I know that there was a lot of work done on signage in the past, year or two. But I'm not sure that that's turned out to be the fix that we had hoped it would be. So I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, you can't make people do things, and you can't fill this park with a million signs either. So
yeah, exactly.
But to Michelle's point, I'm a dog walker in the park every morning, and I love all the off-leash areas, but I have the same concern with the playground area, and it's also close to the parking lot and Black Rock Beach. And I think Black Rock Beach now with the playground is going to draw a lot of young families with kids who are sort of staying put, and rather than coming to the park for a hike. And I'm wondering if, something like changing, I mean, I hate to even suggest this because I love all the off-leash walks that we can do, but that early section where you come in off the lower parking lot near the playground and the beach, I wonder if making that an on-leash section, and then farther away from the crowds, make that the off-leash area, because I'm quite used to keeping an eye on which path am I on. Is the dog supposed to be on leash, or can I let him off leash? Because it is, I agree with Michelle, it could be a problem waiting to happen. But if the area, between Shakespeare by the Sea office and Black Rock Beach, if that section was made an on-leash, you can still be with your dog, but the dog should be on leash in that section. Might be a way of, heading off a potential problem. Who decides which areas are on leash and off leash? How did that get decided? Do you know, Ian?
That was decided, I believe, back in the 90s when the on-leash, off-leash order was instated, basically. And I think basically
Well,
they
it
chose.
it was after amalgamation, right? They had to make the rules the same in all parks, and then make decisions, because before that, I don't know that there was many rules at all about that.
Yeah.
In the early 90s.
I'll jump in there, Ian. So there was a report that went to council probably 10 years ago or so, and it did kind of cover off-leash rules and that kind of thing. So that's when it was decided, like, what will be off-leash and what will be on-leash. From that perspective, I believe that's being reviewed this year, not by us, but by another division of parks. So we can definitely look into, see if everything is if anything needs to be updated in Point Pleasant with the new playground and that kind of thing. And we can also look into a fence as well. I mean, if we do see issues there, we can look into a fence.
I would certainly support
a fence,
might
be easier.
What's that?
I was going to say, I think a fence would be, something that could be, attractive for the, and in keeping with the park setting visually, I think would be a great idea, because it's just the same as the lower drive, the Sailors Memorial Way. You just can't stop people from taking their dogs off leash there after 10 a.m. I mean, we used to, it's ingrained in my head because I would never do it. And so I just don't do it. I did one night at about 10 p.m. when it was pitch black, and I was nervous about getting back to my car by myself. And there was practically no one else in the park. And I'm like, this is the fastest way home in the dark. And I'm going to do my car, so I want to go this way. And if anyone says anything to me, I'm going to say, because I'm nervous and I'm afraid I want to get back to my car quickly. But that's probably the only time I've ever broken that rule, for sure. But I guess...
For the shoreline,
go ahead.
It's no dogs whatsoever after 10 a.m. leashed or unleashed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm familiar with that, but that's not the way people walk it. I walk there all the time and several times a week, and people just keep going.
So this is Ted. So I like the 10 a.m. Guideline. It tends to work well. I think some signage definitely at the playground is worthwhile. I find there's usually, because I walk that beach a lot just before 10, I don't ever see anybody on the beach prior to that. I don't really think it's a problem at that time of day. But, I can understand after 10 o'clock, it could get busier there.
Actually, go ahead, Ted. You finish what you were doing.
Michelle, please go ahead.
Session triggered something in me. When there were signs put up about making sure that they didn't want dogs on that, I want to call it a field, that part right by down the hill from the gazebo, right where where Sailors Memorial Way, where there's no dogs after 10 a.m. Someone put a sign in the wrong place. Because if I'm coming up by the gazebo along Arm Road and I get to the gazebo, when I go down the hill, at the bottom of the foot of the hill, it says dogs have to be on leash after 10 a.m. And I know that they mean to the right of me on that field where dogs used to play sometimes. And that's fine. And I respect that and I understand it. But it says that basically it says that I can't keep walking the next 5 meters and turn right to go back up Arm Road. I'm technically supposed to backtrack. And that's like poor urban design. That's where you see when people have laid down concrete pathways, and you'll see a path in the grass that doesn't follow it because the design it's not made sense. But technically, where that sign is, it suggests that I need to backtrack up the hill path to the gazebo and go back to Arm Road that way, rather than connecting onto it at my first left coming down for the hill from the gazebo.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly what sign you're talking about.
Yeah, and that is one of my biggest pet peeves every time I walk in the because I am so concerned about the rules, because I do enjoy the luxury of having that as an off-leash area that I don't like to break the rules in the park, because I will be the first one that when someone tells me to get my dog on a leash, if I'm in an off-leash area, I'll be the first one to tell them that I'm sorry, you're not familiar with the rules, and we can call up the page right here if you'd like, but they are allowed off-leash there. So I'm very conscious of that technically speaking, because of where that sign is, yeah, it suggests that I'm supposed to track up that little hill to the gazebo and go back around rather than picking onto Arm Road where I always do.
Great. Thanks, Michelle.
So I don't know who looks after those signs, but it's in the wrong place. It should be at that at the intersection rather than at the base of the hill.
Right.
Okay, great. No, thank you. Councillor White, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Couple now, so I'll start with the report that Adam just mentioned that went to council about deciding where dogs go and don't go. Was that just for Point Pleasant or for all park?
That would have been a off-leash report for all of
losing
HR.
sound, or are we losing her?
Nope, this sounds okay with me.
I'm not hearing her. Okay.
Michelle, just repeat it in case you can hear me. I was curious if this report.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was curious about the report to council 10 years ago about on and off leash areas and whether that was specific to Point Pleasant Park or if it was a more general report about all.
Yeah, because I was on the committee that David Hensby had on the go, but that was like closer to 15 to 20 years ago.
Okay, Adam was about to answer us here.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Okay.
That's for all
I'll
of
be
HRM.
quiet.
I can send you the report, Councilor.
It was for all of HRM? Okay.
Yeah.
All of HRM. Okay. Okay. And then my second thought was about, Ian, when you were talking about maintaining the wall and just the thought that, does it make sense to have, since it seems like a ton of work, would it make sense to have a staff person that's their role to kind of constantly slow and steady keep up with the wall? Or, you know, who would kind of look between, does it make sense to hire staff or have a big capital project that we have to wait a long time for and whatnot?
I'm not a stonemason,
yeah,
by any means, but if you had one person focusing on that, it would be endless. It would be, you know, like I said, when it took 2 months to do just around the Stonehouse, that was 3 contracted workers working. They worked 6 days a week, and they were on weekends, and, you know, one person to mix, one person to cut the stone, and then one person to place. But if we had the staff to work on that, like as we discussed earlier, our operation only has 5 full-time staff to work with, and that's to maintain Point Pleasant and then the 4 other major parks we work in, because we don't just work in Point Pleasant, but I think with a contractor doing it, you would hiring a staff member, you would either have to find someone who is qualified and hire them within the union that is able to do that. But then how do we'd have to determine that competency. And if we couldn't and you hired someone, then you would have to have the time to train that individual to the level of competency. So if reaching to a contractor that's already on standing offer, like Coastal Restoration is who does most of the stonework for the city, like
right,
then you're reaching out to people who are that's their skill set, that's what their focus is on, that's their specialty, and they can be more cost effective for a long-term product and in the amount of time it would take to complete compared to in-house staff.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's not that staff that work for HRM can't do it. It's, you know, like we mentioned, we talked earlier, 30 years ago, the staff that worked at the park only worked at the park, and
Right. Yeah.
some of them lived at the park, so that was their, it was when the park is the only thing you have to focus on, it's easier to cover all bases. And a lot of the staff members that worked in the park also before about 2010 had worked there for 30 years, their whole lives. So they are passing those skills on to new staff, where the longest term staff member I have has only been here 15 years, but he's a staff arborist. So he's focusing on arboriculture and silviculture. So it's, I would love if we had a staff member that could do that. It'd be amazing. And, and maybe there is someone in the ranks right now that is willing to step up and do that work. But we have done some in the past within our means on repairing, especially some of the batteries on the shoreline. And we've helped out Shakespeare by the Sea, do some minor brickwork. But I think a lot of, with it being a heritage level stone wall, that's where kind of, even a competent mason who works with us might be like, I'm not that competent. So
yeah, I guess I'm just concerned if it's like, I'm assuming that it's a given that we maintain this wall, or maybe that's up for grabs, or I don't know what's in that comprehensive plan, but it just seems like it's going to get worse and worse if we're waiting for a capital approval.
I think the wall is in the comprehensive plan, I believe. But
okay,
it's just, it's a massive undertaking amongst other many aspects of the park that also require infrastructure renewal, like the shoreline renewal, and the roads need restructuring, which is in the works as a capital project at some point.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm learning, lots to do down there.
Yeah, there's always lots to do. We always find something.
Great, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thanks, Ian. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Ted.
Great. The next item is the meeting schedule for 2025. So that was previously circulated to the committee members. So what I'd like to do is ask for a motion that the Point Pleasant Park Advisory Committee approve the proposed 2025 Point Pleasant Park Committee meeting schedule as outlined in the staff memorandum. I just need a mover and seconder for that.
I'll move that.
Okay.
So Councillor White moved, and do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Was that Dinah? That I couldn't tell who
Michelle.
that was. Oh, Michelle. Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Sorry.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. I'll now call for all those in favor. If you say aye or raise your hand. Okay, contrary minded?
Aye.
Okay, I don't see any opposition, so this motion carried. So there are no added items to the agenda. The next meeting is going to be March 6th, 2025. So look forward to that. And what I'd like to do is, prior to that meeting, I was hoping for a reach out just to committee members to get your sense of things you'd like to see on the agenda for the upcoming year. So you can expect that from me at some point, either by email or perhaps a chance for us to get together. And then I like a motion to adjourn the meeting. So is there somebody who would move to adjourn?
I can.
We all
thanks,
want
Dinah.
to stay.
Right. So that's all. I appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.